It's the Dusty Wright Show on the internet, you know. It's the Dusty Wright Show. It's the best show on the internet show. It's the Dusty Wright Show. Go on the internet, you know. It's the Dusty Wright Show. Go blowing on the Dusty Wright Show. It's that minor 9. That's what you want to get to. That's a bad one right there.
On the Dusty Wright Show today, to my left, to your right, if you're looking this way,
C'est moi.
Kurt Elling. In his casa, not ours.
That's right.
This is when you know you've made it, when the crew comes to you.
Is that true?
Unless you don't want your domicile to be seen.
Everything is in motion, man. If this was the statement abode where I had planted the flag, and it was going to be cribs, man, then I would have some concern about it. But in as much as it's just a wall or two with some photos, and you know, just among friends, and you know, it's a group.
It's comfortable though, man. You know?
That's what you want. You
Yeah.
want to have it. We had a bunch of musicians over here for the big snowfall when everybody was snowed in.
Yeah.
So we just had the guitars going, and everybody was just cooking for each other and just singing music, you know, playing music, and just it was great. It was a gas. So comfort.
Well, you know, here's the thing. In the music industry, can anyone make music and make a living at it if you're not touring? I mean, that's your bread and butter. You got to tour.
As a jazz musician, it definitely is. But there's nothing really new about that from what I gather in the jazz world. You know, you think of, you know, these fantastic hit records from the world of jazz. A Love Supreme, Blue, not Blue and Green, the Miles Davis thing.
Bitches Brew.
Well, any of those, and Miles is an exception, right? So
Right,
he could
Kinda
actually,
Blue.
he could actually make, you know, royalties
Right.
if the lawyers didn't screw him out of it.
Right.
Which
The music industry and
happens
people
plenty.
getting screwed
Yeah,
out
right.
of it.
Who knew? But most jazz musicians, you know, Sonny Stitt, Dexter Gordon, you know, you not only is it that you want to be out playing. You want to be with your musicians, you want to be mixing it up, you want to be touring, you want to be playing concerts, but you also just have to, because nobody's ever sold enough records
Right.
to just kick back in their, you know, grand mansion.
Right.
Miles Davis notwithstanding.
Right.
You know,
Exception to the rule. But yeah, you know, this genre, and it's unfortunate because here is a genre indigenous to America. And you would think that with all of that history, do you think the youth culture of today is hip to jazz? Is it
Yeah.
back in a Renaissance mode, do you think?
no, it's definitely not a renaissance, but young music fans, if they're really into music, they're going to want to taste everything. And this is one of the ways that the internet and the way communication is working now, when things are being liberated. You know, there's a lot more open space. It's all being ripped open at this point, and there hasn't been the sort of reassertion of an oligarchical structure that's going to command, this is what you listen to, this is the thing. Right. And it's been a challenge for jazz because, and I would say for a lot of the kind of outer borough genres. I mean, as it is, there aren't enough, you know, it's kind of like the thing where as the drought continues for the traditional structure, the water supply gets less and less, and then you get all these fish eating all the smaller, and there's only like the one fish left in the muddy African pond, you know, that can still breathe, and that's not going to be a jazz fish.
Right.
Right?
Right.
However, and that's where the analogy kind of ends in my, you know, because there's a critical mass of jazz people who believe in the music and who want to hear it and who will continue to come out for the shows. They tend to be aging, statistically, but as I say, because younger music fans are always going to be interested in good music, then they're going to seek it out and they're going to find a way. And the bookend to that is that because jazz musicians are the greatest innovators in music, because it's what we do, we're improvising every night, we're trying to play a sequence of notes that we, and potentially nobody, has ever played before,
right,
every night. And because that's our regular mindset, and you got all these great music students coming up in the music schools and whatnot, these are people who naturally innovate, who naturally overcome obstacles. So it's just really a matter of time before the jazz people figure out how they're going to break out into consciousness again.
right,
And then it's going to be on.
repopulate it.
Yeah. So
Repopulate.
for now, it's just for all the fish that can swim and can keep breathing to
Right.
keep swimming and keep breathing.
I think there's more of a sensitivity to the mindset in Europe and foreign lands for some reason. Is it the allure of the American experience, the Americana?
Well, I kind of assume.
Patina.
Yeah, I mean,
They're drawn to something they don't know. They didn't create it.
Exactly. It's not native to them, therefore it's a thing.
All right.
Also, there's a history of great African American musicians going over at critical times when America was in fashion, when we had, just won World War II and everything was like, woohoo, America.
Right.
And again, in the Kennedy administration, et cetera, et cetera. So, there's a history of that. But there's also a little bit of kind of residual racist thing that comes across in some of the countries because of the kind of ideal of the noble savage,
Right,
and this
right.
is noble savage music and whatnot. And obviously, the level of virtuosity and the level of, human and humane innovation among jazz musicians of every color stripe at this point has so far left that negative idea in the past.
Right.
And now jazz has its own root system happening in France, in Germany, in a lot of the Scandinavian countries, in Spain, you go to these places and you just, wow, Australia, what? Great jazz musicians in Australia. And yet there they are.
Right.
So in a way, jazz is becoming and has become one of the forms of world music. It's the world music that comes from
interesting.
America.
Sure.
So you put it into that bag.
Yeah.
Now you got a whole other perspective on it.
Yeah, that's a nice take on it. I like that. Is New York to you? Has New York recaptured a little bit of the jazz foothold that it had lost? I felt like, when New York was in the 80s and stuff, when all the alternative music was hitting here, it became like every alternative band in the world wanted to set foot here. And jazz got kind of pushed aside. Then Witten, years later, Witten gets appointed Lincoln Center. Young people are being engaged in jazz music. Some of the clubs are starting to get hip again. Not they were never hip. But, you start to see more jams and stuff, younger guys playing with some of the more, serious guys. Ron Carter branching out, playing with Bill Frisell.
Sure, well...
you'd see these...
But I mean, jazz musicians always want to play music with each other.
Right.
You'll always find older cats pulling younger cats into their orbit. And you'll always find younger cats desperately wanting to hit with a Roy Haynes,
Right.
desperately wanting to hit with a Herbie Hancock, desperately wanting to hit with a Lee Konitz.
Right.
The cats who can, and that's the thing about jazz that is, it's not unique to it, but it's certainly a different thing from most pop music. And that is that pop music is about youth music as such. Right. It's about the youngest, newest flavor and the bangiest, flashiest thing that can happen that's going to just surprise everybody.
Right.
And jazz is definitely about surprising the audience over and over again, but it's also about longevity, and it's about the virtuosity and the nuance and the perspective that's gained over a lifetime. So you'll get to be 60, 70 years old, and if you've paid all your dues and you've come through it, and now you're Ornette Coleman, now you are the senior statesman of
Right.
it. You're not left behind. If anything, I mean, people bow down to you that much more because you've stuck to your guns, and now you're teaching everybody else one of the viable avenues of creativity.
Right.
So it's not just the bad boys that come on. It's the bad boys coming on in conversation, if you will, in artistic conversation with the whole history of the music.
Right.
And everybody who listens to it says, well, wow, Jason Moran, his thing is coming out of this whole stream of innovators.
Right.
And that's it's part and parcel of what's making his music valuable at this point. It's not just him thumbing his nose at the history, far from it. It's him digesting the history and then putting his own stamp on it.
When did you know that this was the genre for you?
It wasn't really one moment. It had a lot more to do with a kind of cumulative experience for me, where I fell in love with the sound, I fell in love with the recordings, I went out to hear some people, I fell in love with the experience of it, I started to sit in a couple of places, and musicians, time and again, sort of, I was just flying by the seat of my pants all the time. But I had enthusiasm, and I was willing to get out there and take risks. And because of that, and because I was starting to do my homework, older musicians, specifically on the Chicago scene, but I mean throughout, would just sort of, hey young fella, hey now, what's your name? And wow, you gotta come back. Now you come back next week. And they really put their arms around me.
They validated your direction, your risks.
Before I even knew that I had a direction.
Right.
Nice. They're like, man, you're with us. Why? What do you do in that graduate school? Like, you're with us.
Right.
And it came at a really critical time when you're a young person, when you're a young man, and you really don't know what road you're going down, and then you get some cats who are definitely respectable, hip, older, established people looking you in the eye and saying, hey, you're actually with us. You're in our club. You're part of our family. Come over here.
Right.
You take notice of that, and that becomes a very important moment in your life, extended moment in your life, because it doesn't happen on just one night. It happens over a series of months and years and a series of experiences, because it doesn't sink in right away when you got as thick a skull as I do.
Well, I see more of a fraternity in the jazz world and the jazz hierarchy than you do with some of the other genres. Hip hop and stuff that it's so competitive, and they kill each other if they don't like.
Right.
They diss each other, or rock and roll. Like, yeah, you respect somebody unless you get to that elder statesman status. Then you want to share.
Yeah.
Your background.
Well, and you want to keep in the game.
And you want to, absolutely. But, I love the fact that, yes, you can go to a club like Smoke on a Tuesday night and see young and old sitting side by side, trading chops.
And trying to teach each other, and definitely challenging each other.
That's right.
That's
the thing.
It's not just a love fest all the time. We all love the music, but I mean, boy, I've been cut ear to ear on any number of occasions by some great singers out there, and definitely by any number of instrumentalists. And you got to just bow before that and know that you have more homework to do.
Yeah.
And that's part of the thing. It's like, wow, man, if you really love the music, then how come you don't know this? Or if you love the music, have you checked this out? And and then it's on. The cutting session, man. That's as important as anything.
Were you a little daunted by the New York scene, having left Chicago?
Yeah.
And being insulated in that
Sure.
world?
I mean, I'm kind of an outsider on so many levels. I mean, I didn't come up from jazz people.
Right.
And I came to it kind of late. And I'm, like I say, I'm not a legacy person, and I am a singer, which is a whole other, space to come from. And I didn't move to New York the first thing. I did live in Chicago until I was, almost 40 years old. And I think New York ought to be a little intimidating. You know, it's part of its magic and part of its charm and part of the reality of it. And the jazz scene here and the music scene and the people that you bump into on the streets and that kind of a thing, it's both exciting and challenging.
Right.
And that's cool. Because then you have something to live up to.
Keeps you going, man. Get your feet out of the bed.
Something to develop.
Yeah. Do you have a work ethic that you think has afforded you a little bit more? You know, having come from not the traditional music background, you know, some people approach their craft with a little bit more of a pragmatic thing.
Well, I don't know how you could be any kind of jazz musician and not have a pretty heavy self-drive work ethic. Does it help, that I've put my shoulder to the wheel? Sure, of course. You're not going to really get anything done unless you've got that, unless you've got a drive and a desire and an imagination to see like what the goals are. Who are you shooting at?
Right.
Who's got the bullseye on their back that you're chasing down?
Well, that's what I'm trying to drive at. A lot of young cats practice. You never see them anywhere. They may throw a video up or something, but they don't challenge themselves in the live experience. They don't go to the club. They don't get accepted by the fraternity or that group. Where you got to get yourself out there to see. Are you up to it?
Yeah. Yeah,
you got to take the risk. You got to get shot down.
That's part of what New York is, because there's sessions all the time. You just got to know what the deal is going to be.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah, you can always find something new. I concern myself more whether people are tired of me singing a certain piece than
Even
I'm
though
tired
they're
of
yelling out for it.
Yeah, I want to keep surprising people and keep challenging them and keep my audience awake.
Right.
And not fall into the trap of great, he's doing this, X, wait till you hear this part, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
That has its moment, but as a rule, I'd rather freak people out if I can.
Right. So you like to change the set around.
I do. I get very restless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's probably better for your musicians too, because you don't want to just kind of be in the same place.
Yeah, keeps them on their toes, and you always, I like to be developing new stuff and pushing the envelope. I think if, sometimes the cats are just like, man, can't we just play the gig? And we're like, no, we played it last night. Now we're going to play
No
this.
safety net, man. No safety
Okay,
net.
all right, but I got to use the book. All right.
All right, just come back on the one. Favorite gig? Do you have one that really you go, wow?
Man, I look back and there's a club in Chicago called the Green Mill, which was my home club for a lot of years. I did a steady Wednesday there. And man, I really miss having a steady gig. I wish I could get something happening in New York here that was just under the radar, and I could come, and even if it was just one set, and I could have a different guest on every week, because I really miss that interaction.
Right.
And keeping the band fresh and keeping everything all lubed up. But I remember starting out there, and I remember the first time I went to hang out, just to sit in. I was still doing graduate school and divinity school, and a friend of mine and I stayed up, and the session started at 1 in the morning, went till 4 in the morning, and the guy, the guy in charge of the gig sort of kept me waiting until 3:45, and then I got up and I did my thing, and after I was like, hey man, if you need a singer, and he looked at my card, and he went, yeah, right, and he threw it on the floor. And he's like, no, I'm kidding. I'm like, ay. To now, where, when we come home, it's a real homecoming in Chicago. And, there's a line around the block, and people wait for hours in the snow. And there's so much enthusiasm, and there's so much verve about what we have to offer. I've played Carnegie Hall, and I've played Lincoln Center, and I've played, Paris and Rome, but coming home and having people be so excited and plan their honeymoon around, or plan a trip from Europe, or plan You know, we came all the way from Australia to hear you here, mate. You know, like, wow, really? Yeah, we couldn't even get in right away. I'm so glad to see you. Like, all right.
That's
you
great,
know,
man.
That's nice.
That's a great pat on the back.
That really just, that's the deal, man.
Yeah.
I just love the fans.
Are you going to be one of those parents that are going to steer, you know, you hear about the showbiz parents, steer my kids away from, you know, the entertainment biz, you know?
No, I'm not going to steer her toward or away from it. I mean, I don't need her to be Jean-Benet Ramsey or something. That's not for my kid, man. I'm not going to have it roll like that. But I mean, if you know, nothing make me happier than for her to be picking up an instrument and be serious about it.
Right.
Man, you should hear her. She's 5. One of her babysitters is an oboe doctoral person.
Right.
And she brings her oboe over, and she's like, "Hey, Lo, check this out." And like, damn, but she can't get a sound out of an oboe from Jump Street.
Wow.
I mean, you know, this other gal does the fingering, but I mean, double reed,
Right.
and she's 5, and it sounds good.
Uh-oh.
It's like, wow.
Yeah.
Hey, buddy, would you like to take some lessons on that?
Yeah, exactly.
No, Daddy. Okay, well, okay, cool. You know, we'll get one for you if you're ready, though. And if I can, at the same time, you know, get you to recognize, you know, the voice of Louis Armstrong when it comes on the radio, and you can appreciate that, then good. And if I can get you to dig on Dexter Gordon or Sonny Stitt, then we're good with that. As long as you can appreciate it, and as long as you know that I value this, and that I'm giving my life to it, and that you can groove on some portion of it, then that's all that counts.
Right. Kurt, I wanted to thank you for letting us into your home.
Absolutely.
Sharing your story.
Yeah, man.
And the conversation. And we look for you down the road, man.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Continued success.
The Gate, February 8. The Gate. Kurt Elling, The Gate,
And
February 8.
And look for these under-the-radar gigs that I'm going to help set up.
KurtElling.com,
That's right. Very important.
etc.
And pay for his music.
Oh, God.
Please.
Just come out to a gig. It doesn't matter.
We'll see you soon.